Welcome, everybody. I'm Karen Kelleher, Caregiver Support Coordinator for DayBreak. I welcome you all. We're going to take a look today at emotions. We all have them. Some of them we avoid, some of them we judge, some of them we repress, some of them take us by surprise. But we're going to look at what that roller coaster looks like and identify the fact that we all can get taken by that roller coaster for a very merry ride. I think it's important, first of all, I always like to consult Google when I'm looking at a definition for something. And certainly with emotions, it's good to look at a definition. And Google says natural instinctive state of mind sourced from one's own circumstances, mood, and relationships with others. Makes sense. I think we have to kind of hold the understanding that emotions are messages we need to listen to. So many times we avoid the uncomfortable emotions and do all kinds of things around it to avoid having to experience them or express them. We've been told anger is bad and depression is bad, and we look at with a sense of judgment and shame sometimes when we're feeling something that maybe isn't our ideal sense of ourselves, but they're trying to tell us something. And if we look at them as useful tools for understanding what's going on inside of us, we can give it a little bit of dignity. Acceptance is the first and sometimes the most challenging part of dealing with emotions, especially uncomfortable ones. You may have different feelings about yourself in your role as caregiver. So we're going to take a look at the fact that caregiving is a balancing act. We all know that, and sometimes we feel the imbalance of it. And let's take a look at what that balancing act might look like. You may feel invisible. Others overlook your situation. It's difficult to find a balance. You're caring for someone else while trying to care for yourself. And that's always going to be a bit of a balance. So let's just take a look at what the emotions are. We're going to be looking at anger and frustration. We're going to be looking at guilt, depression, stress and exhaustion, grief, and social isolation. We're not looking at happy and joy and peaceful today. We're going to look at the ones that confound us and take us by surprise sometimes and take us over. And let's take a look at how we can manage and deal with those within that. We're going to start with anger. What is anger? Sometimes we think it's a mental thing, but we're feeling it in our stomachs and our belly. We're feeling a tightness. We're feeling a tenseness. And out of that, we find ourselves easily annoyed and irritable. We find ourselves coping, powerless, helpless, feeling mad and hostile, irrational behavior. We feel aggressive. Our heart is pounding, our pulse. You may find a shortness in breath. All of a sudden, I'm angry. I'm definitely feeling anger. It's taking me over. I don't like what I'm feeling. I wish I were feeling something else, but right now I'm angry. Take a look at that. There's always a good reason for our feelings. They are telling us something. And if we suppress it or judge it or try to ignore it, it won't go away. And it isn't getting the dignity of the message that has to tell us. So what might that message be? Something we feel powerless over, something we feel, we may have a story about it, like I'm feeling taken advantage of, I'm feeling overwhelmed and frustrated. Things are too much for me right now. I shouldn't have to be doing this. There's all kinds of stories that we build around that emotion. And yet that emotion is trying to tell us something. It's an early warning signal that we need to pay attention to something. So what is the possible way, the desirable way rather, of managing it? Okay, I'm angry. But if we bottle it up, what's going to happen? It's like shaking a bottle of Coca-Cola and holding the top of the lid down. It's building up velocity. So instead of bottling it up, it's important to express it in calm, constructive way. I statements are really important. I feel saying something instead of blaming someone. I feel this. I feel angry. Owning it. Give it a little dignity. I'm angry for a reason. I need to look at that. And bottling it up is not giving it the dignity that it deserves. So I statements are very important and not blaming. You never, they never. Let's give an example of someone isn't picking up around the house. They never help me. You never help me. Instead, the message can be, I feel upset because I'm not getting any help around the house. That's a pretty clean statement. This is why I feel angry. This is why I feel this emotion right now. And in saying it, you're really giving an idea that you want resolution with it. We don't want to feel these uncomfortable feelings, but how do we deal with them in a healthy way that gets our needs met? We talk a lot in groups about unmet needs. And what happens when we aren't attending to an unmet need. We work at that with our care receivers. Why are they behaving the way they are or exhibiting an uncomfortable emotion? What is their unmet need? So we need to also look at what is my unmet need and how can I get that need met? We're going to look at that a little more in depth in a moment, but I think it's important first to look at the dignity of the emotion itself. I'm angry for a reason. No one else may agree with it. It may not make logical sense to me, but because I have that emotion, I need to take a look at what is the message that it's giving me and what can I do to meet that need. Sometimes it's as important as looking at how you can communicate more clearly with someone. That's extremely important. But most of all, how am I going to deal with this feeling right now? We have a wonderful tool that we use in our caregiving group called the rant line. The rant line, Rebecca's giving big thumbs up. The rant line is an important thing to look at. When you're angry, the fact that you're angry, giving it the dignity says, I need some place who release this toxic feeling I'm having. I'm angry. So we employ the rant line. We have a prearranged agreement with one of our caregivers that says, I will call you and rant. I'll get your permission first. And if you're not busy, I'm going to ask for 5 minutes and I'm going to call you up and I'm just going to rant. And the lovely thing about a rant line is you can cuss, you can scream, you can do whatever you like. Hopefully you don't scream so hard you hurt a person's eardrums. But the idea is to be uncensored in releasing that toxic energy you're feeling inside. Now, the placeholder, the person that you are calling, the rantee, is not going to give you advice, is not going to give you feedback, is not going to go, oh, you poor baby, oh, I feel what you feel, and try to fix it. The whole idea is that you have a silent partner that is creating a safe space for you to vent and let go of that anger in a healthy way. And you can feel it viscerally. Anyone who's used the rant line can tell you, you feel a release. When you're through ranting, you don't say, hey, thanks for listening to me. You are keeping the focus on yourself. This is a selfish moment. And you have agreed with the person that you are calling that it is going to take that form. You hang up. You hang up. How many times do we have an opportunity to be where we're being when we are really having a popular, uncomfortable emotion and having someone hold the space for you so you can release it? So that's when we say don't bottle it up. That's what we're talking about, finding a safe space to be able to release it. Were you not to have the rant line, you could go out and shout in a safe place. You can whack a bat on a bed. You can punch a pillow. The important thing is to give that energy, let that energy be released. I want to add that it isn't necessary that your anger be justified. If you're feeling it, it is justified, period. There is no reason to have to explain it and, explain it and have it be okay. Now, the outcome may not change, but the importance is once you have released the anger, you are free now to take a more proactive stance with whatever was focusing, whatever your anger was focused upon. So that's very, very important to honor your anger emotion and let it go. We're going to move on to guilt. We're going to move on to guilt. Guilt is a tough one because it's also a message our emotions are giving us that tests our integrity, tests our right to be. When you're feeling guilty, you may not feel like you're doing enough, or your thoughts and feelings feel guilty. You could do more. You could have done something to prevent an illness or condition. That guilt, whether it's justified or not, is really immaterial. If you're feeling it, it's an emotion. And if it's an emotion, it needs to have a voice. It needs to have the dignity of that. There can be a guilt from enjoying yourself when other people are not. If your care receiver is not joining in a pleasant activity that you're doing, guilt is not an appropriate response to that. You deserve to have your own space and your own enjoyment. You can feel guilty about having bad thoughts and feelings or regrets. Oh, regrets are a good one. Or your current relationship with your care receiver. Did you do it right? Were you fair? We are such judges of ourselves, and that can build up into a tremendous sense of guilt. You can also feel guilty that you're neglecting some of your friends and family members in the task of being a caregiver. Here again, as we'll continue to say, pointed up on all the emotions, the feeling of guilt is natural. We all feel it at some point. If you've done something to feel guilty about, it's good to talk to a fellow care receiver. Important to talk to your care receiver and be honest with them. I feel really badly about this. I want to do better next time. It's important to clear your conscience. It's important also to share your guilt feelings with friends and family and support groups and recognize this is where a support group is so incredibly helpful to realize that you're not alone, that other people are feeling guilt too. And that's a legitimate assessment. We try so hard to do the best we can, and we're our own worst judges when we judge that behavior, when we judge that feeling, when we judge that reaction. It's a very hard thing to deal with guilt, but the dignity of that feeling and giving it a voice can release you from being a captive of it. We're going to move on to depression. Depression. What is depression? Some of the signs are feeling down, frequently crying. It can show up as a change in appetite, weight, especially sleep. We may find that we have a loss of interest and motivation, loss of energy. It can impair our ability to think and concentrate. Thoughts of death or suicide are the extreme end of depression. What we're really saying is that we don't want to feel this anymore. We don't want to feel that black cloud that may be feeling over our heads. It's a hard and uncomfortable feeling that you just don't feel that you can shake sometimes. It's good to talk to other people and talk to friends, relatives, fellow caregivers about being depressed. Here again, the knowledge that you're not alone is so important, so important. We begin to feel that perhaps feeling the depression, I might want to move out of that and find a way to manage that feeling. And what we turn to is certain ways that seem to help. Depression is a cumulative emotion that is from cumulative feelings, cumulative thoughts, rather. When we're depressed, as with the other emotions that we're talking about, we notice our thought patterns play into that. When we're feeling depressed, we can find a lot of companion reasons to feel down, to feel depressed, and that adds to the burden. So how do we go about managing it? Well, we know that physical exercise gets the endorphins activated, and that's important. A walk around the block. A couple of things happen with physical exercise. For one thing, your focus is going to change. You're focused on the activity that you're doing. It gives you a respite from the depressing thoughts and feelings that you're experiencing. Of course, we want to spend time in enjoyable places, and that can look like a lot of things. It can look like a trip to the grocery store. It can look like having tea with a friend. Enjoyable places don't have to be elaborate and planned out so much as what gives you joy, what gives you a sense of hope. You know, it can be a good book. It can be so many things that drawing, journaling. There are ways to manage the depression by giving a voice to it and moving beyond it. Certainly, if the depression persists, it's so important to consult a health provider, someone that can guide you in certain ways and perspectives. If medication is called for, antidepressants on a temporary or more managed basis, that's important to do. We want to look at depression as a message that our emotions are sending to us, that we're feeling overwhelmed, that we're feeling that things have become unmanageable. In that roller coaster, we're going to also look at stress and exhaustion. Wow. Physical and emotional tension can really exhaust us. So many of us have so much to handle all at once. We're juggling family, we're juggling care receiver, we're juggling our own needs, we're juggling the course of daily living. It can have a tremendous impact on our sense of well-being. When we feel as if we have more than we can handle, that stress becomes very, very, very strong. It's interesting because in small amounts, stress is healthy and useful. How can that be? As a healthy amount of stress can help you respond and react to a situation, such as a deadline. What it can also do is in small doses, it can help you to problem solve. You can be looking at it in terms of, okay, I'm feeling stressed. What is called for that I can use here that can ease some of this stress? It's important to remember that our bodies can recover from short-term stress. And what is short-term stress versus long-term stress? Very important to differentiate. A short-term stress can be a spilled pot of coffee or something that requires immediate attention. Immediate attention and immediate remedy. We can rise to that. We can problem solve with that. Long-term stress can be over a long period of time. We are handling the stress of caring for a loved one who is in decline. There is a stress level that arises as we care for our loved one whose hierarchy of needs is rising. They need more assistance, more attention, more care than they did before. So exponentially, our stress level is rising, even as that need that arises with our care receiver is rising. So too is our stress and exhaustion level. We have more to do, more to care for, more to look out for, more to guard against. It is a rising and ever-present emotion that tends to get stronger as our care receiver moves through the disease process and the decline that they are experiencing. Now, let's look a little bit at the warning signs and symptoms. And that is, what is the cognitive sign and symptom of our challenging emotions? Well, and this applies to just about all the emotions that we are talking about. We tend to see only the negative. There's something in our thought processes that says, oh, you think this is bad? Well, what about? So instead of symptom relief, it's piling it on. Oh, you think you're worried about that? Well, how about this? How about that? The cognitive level also involves trouble in thinking clearly. When we are stressed, when we are emotionally overwhelmed, we have trouble thinking clearly. It's almost as if our cognitive processes are on hold. And of course, the cognitive level was certainly going to engage us in worry. We worry about what we're feeling. We worry about the circumstances that we're dealing with. It feeds into the negative energy and the negative emotions that we are feeling. So then we move into the emotional aspect of sign and symptoms. How are you feeling in terms of agitation, irritability, moodiness? Are you able to relax? Do you find yourself with a short temper? Why did I go off the handle like that? Okay, maybe you're overwhelmed. You're feeling tense. It's an emotional reaction to the feedback that we are having from these emotions themselves. Where do we feel it physically? Headaches, backaches, muscle tension, stiffness, weight gain or loss. All of those are physical symptoms of what we are experiencing. And then we look at the behavioral aspect of it. Changes in sleeping and eating, isolating ourselves, using alcohol, cigarettes, or drugs. Why? Because we don't want to feel the feelings we're feeling. And if we can't find a way to manage them and have a healthy outlet for them, we're going to reach for the first thing that is going to change that feeling. And typically, especially in our society, we look outside of ourselves for all kinds of stimulants, drugs, pills, alcohol, cigarettes are healthy or unhealthy examples, very pertinent examples of what we do when we don't want to feel the feelings we're feeling. And yet, going back to what we were saying earlier, these feelings, these emotions are trying to tell us something. If we short circuit it by trying to get rid of it, we're not only not listening to the message, but we're not moving into a healthy state of being because we're trying to bypass it. A lot of people will use the internet as a diversion. You know, there's lots of diversions out there for us not to feel the feelings we're feeling, and yet we are not addressing the feelings and giving them a healthy outlet. We're merely trying to find a substitute outside of ourselves for handling that. I want to talk a little about managing the stress and exhaustion. Well, one of the first methods that are recommended are, of course, looking at your diet. When we drink plenty of fluids, especially water, and stick to the foods recommended on the food pyramid, limit fatty and sugary foods, we can feel the difference when we have a box of chocolates versus a green salad. You can have that momentary rush of how wonderful that chocolate is. But if you're really listening to your body and you're really listening to your emotions, you realize that there's a short shelf life of satisfaction from eating unhealthily, that particularly you're going to feel better when you have eaten and stuck to a healthy diet. It's temporary fix for a long-term goal. Of course, we talked about exercise. Some of the benefits, of course, is it's going to decrease blood pressure, certainly enhances mood and emotional well-being. So how much are we talking about? They recommend 20 to 30 minutes of daily walking. That's something that we can fit into our schedules usually, and it doesn't require having to go to the gym or engaging in an exercise class. What it really means is getting yourself out into, first of all, away from the home scene, so that you have a change of locale, but it also gets your body moving in a way that raises your endorphins. We talk a little bit about prioritizing. When you're in stress and exhaustion, everything feels urgent. The kitchen floor feels as urgent as paying your PG&E bill. We lump them all together, and the stress all comes into a big bundle. If we prioritize it and determine what really needs to be done now, and hierarchy of what we can put off till later, that's important. It really is. When we act as if everything is urgent, we end up sometimes not doing any of the tasks because we feel overwhelmed and exhausted at the mere thought of it. There's a lot of talk about being present. And sometimes what that looks like is, if the kitchen floor needs mopping, that's what I'm going to focus on right now. Not the 10 other things that have my attention, but one thing at a time. That slows us down to the point where we can prioritize. Some of us have difficulty asking for help. I really need help, but I don't want to ask anybody. I don't want to burden anybody. I don't want to obligate anybody, this, that, and the other thing. When really what we need is some help. And that can also translate to knowing when to say no. When you feel overwhelmed or people are asking too much of you, no is a complete sentence. And it is important to be able to say no and mean it when you're feeling overwhelmed. Some of the relaxation techniques that are suggested, that I'll list briefly, yoga, we talked about walking, meditation, guided imagery, massage therapy, deep breathing. Sometimes when we are angry or at the effect of any of these overwhelming emotions, stopping and taking a deep breath, breathing in, taking in a breath and slowly letting it out, can do a lot in a moment of overwhelm. Now we're going to go on to grief. A lot of us have looked at the whole area of caregiving and caring for a loved one in mental decline as an ongoing grief process. And rightly so it is. And so honoring the emotion of grief means giving dignity to the fact that, yes, there is a factor of grief in caregiving in itself. You're losing the life you once had. You're losing your loved one. Slowly but surely they are declining. And so you're losing the relationship as it once was. You're having to forge a new relationship. And there's grief, and grief is loss. It's emotional pain. It's associated with anything that you have lost in your life that you once had. Grief also is about changes. The changes in your life, the changes in your loved one, the changes in your social life and your relationships. There is a grieving for what was. So that's important to give that dignity. Of course, there's grief. Another part of grief is disappointment. What does that mean? Well, the loss of hopes, the loss of dreams, the loss of plans that you had for the future, the loss of your professional life, perhaps, the loss of your loved one's professional life, the retirement you thought you were going to have that no longer is a possibility. Those all are part of the grieving process. And to feel that grief is to acknowledge that grief and give it dignity, says, well, of course I'm in grief. As with all our other challenging and painful emotions, it's so good to be able to be with people who get where you are feeling. Our support group is a wonderful place for that, because it helps us to manage those emotions and know that you're not alone. I think the most important thing when you're feeling these incredibly uncomfortable feelings is that feeling of being alone. There is something about sharing an emotion that is comforting, is reassuring, but also helps to move us into how do we manage those emotions. Allowing yourself to grieve, what does that mean? It means if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling loss, as so many times I recommend, journaling is so important. Give dignity to the grief that you're feeling. These are very real, very raw emotions, and in giving them the dignity that they deserve, journaling is a wonderful way, wonderful manner to be able to honor that feeling. You may go back years from now and reading that journal and the dignity that you had and what you dealt with can be a tool for incredible a sense of pride and an appreciation for what you've been through. So I really recommend journaling for that. And also it gives a voice to the feeling that you are having at the moment. Certainly focusing on a positive plan. What do we mean by that? When we focus on a plan, we're focusing on the reality of what is, the reality of what may be coming next, and planning for it. And once that plan is made, and as that plan is being made, you may set it aside and be able to be where you're being. But feeling that you have a plan for a future beyond the grief process is very important. It's an affirmation of yourself and your life going forward. Certainly surrounding yourself with others. We so value that. Isolation is so much a part of the negative feelings that we experience. We really get so much strength from surrounding ourselves with others and to talk about our issues with a professional. We're going to move into social isolation. We know what that feels like. We know what that looks like. Many of us have gone through it. And we feel disconnected from our previous life. Co-workers we used to work with, neighbors that aren't going through the caregiving process. That can feel very much feed into a sense of social isolation. And it only tends to increase as the disease progresses and the care demands progress. Feeling disconnected from our previous life? Absolutely. Your focus is being more and more centered on whom you are caring for, not being invited out for social events. Oh boy, people tend to avoid us. And sometimes we can't get away. So there's that goes into unable to attend those functions. So we feel cut off from the social life that we used to have. Certainly, it's important to ask for help. Oftentimes people don't understand unless we really talk and are candid with them about your situation, what you're going through, and they assume that you have it under control. That is a fallacy so much of the time. We don't want to impose on people, so consequently, we often don't share with them what we're going through. Not a pity party, not an ain't it awful, but just, hey, here's what I'm dealing with. This is where I could use some help. This is hard, and I could use your support. Being candid about it, that is important. People may or may not be able to get your situation. Support groups are so incredible because we do get it. We are in similar situations. We don't need to explain ourselves. We don't need to justify why we're having a bad day. People get it. And they also rejoice on the days that we're having a better day. So it's important to stay in contact with others. Very, very important. We'll talk a moment about respite care and other services. It is important to avail yourself of whatever help you can get through social services. Respites are important. Timeouts are important. Time away is important. If you're not caring for yourself, you cannot care for others. It's just so important before you are in what we call burnout. We want to avoid that. And that's why managing these emotions as they come along are very, very important ahead of time. So let's take a look at words of wisdom. Words of wisdom, words of support. Take a real conscious assessment of what you can and cannot do, and do not mix them up. That's where these negative emotions can really come into play, is when you demand of yourself that which you cannot do. Be honest with yourself and with the situation. Do what you can and allow for what you cannot. The hierarchy, the priorities, pick which things are important. Pick them and be willing to cross off some of the things that maybe are low on the list. Maybe they don't have to be done. Maybe they don't have to be done right now. One day at a time. We hear that a lot, and it's really true. You never know what tomorrow's going to bring. So perseverating ahead of time and, oh no, it's going to be awful tomorrow. You don't know. Being present in the here and now is the only way that you can effectively manage your life. And when we feel ourselves slipping, bring it back. What can I do right now? What am I doing right now? Very important. Forgive yourself when things don't go the way you want them to. Forgive your care receiver when they don't cooperate with the things that you want them to. The disease is a disease of both caregiver and care receiver. Make no mistake, even though we feel because we're in charge, so to speak, that the disease is not part of us. Well, it is. And the coping mechanisms and the support that we get in this process is extremely important. I want the takeaway to be that we accept our different feelings at different times. When you're angry, accept that you're angry. Your emotions are trying to tell you something. Listen to it. There's wisdom in our emotions if we step back enough to listen. I'm angry for a reason. What is my unmet need in this moment? Can it be met? If it cannot be met, what can I do to alleviate some of the impact? I can call the rant line. I can walk outside. I can take a deep breath. I can call a friend and invite them over. There are things I can do when I feel this feeling. So accept those feelings. Do not be afraid to ask for help. That is so important. I can't emphasize it enough. You know, people can say no. People cannot understand. That's in their purview. But in asking for help, you might be surprised at how many people didn't know you needed help, didn't know they had anything to contribute. And it might be a way to forge an entirely different relationship with your loved ones because you asked for some help. Emphasize here, schedule time for yourself. If it's only incremental, do you have a half hour in your given day that you can count on? What can you do in that half hour that nourishes you? Plan for it, look for it, seize it in parcels and in portions if you need to. But the focus needs to be on focusing on scheduling and having time for yourself. And finally, and most importantly, know you're not alone. You are not alone. There are so many that are sharing your life situation right now, that understand and get what you're going through. And know that my favorite saying these days is, it came to pass not to stay. There will come a time when your life will look quite different than it does right now. You can't know what that's going to look like, but it will be different, and you will be different. And the degree to which you can allow yourself to be here now and to realize that this is not a forever thing. This is a part of your life story, but it isn't the entire life story. It's important to remember hope and courage and being who you are and knowing that you have the hardest job that you will ever have. I thank you all, and I thank you for what you do and who you are, and for sharing space. We have a few minutes for comments and questions. I would really love to hear from you. Just feel free to jump in. Yeah, Rebecca.
Hi. I just want to say, number one, how grateful I am that you presented this forum or symposium, whatever we call it. It's right. I had a discussion with you an hour ago, and it's right where I needed to be today. It's like it was a gift from God. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it. Those of you that know me, I've just decided yesterday that now's the time to put my husband in the next level of care. And it's been such a hard thing. And
Yes.
my heart goes out to Serene and other people who have had to do this, because it is very, very hard. But this class, this symposium, so much wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And, you know, just a brief comment. There may come a time when a higher level of care is called for, that as much as you are willing to, want to, you cannot handle the level of care that your loved one needs. And you will get a lot of support in that choice, because that is taking care of you and taking care of your loved one. if you can't care for them the way they need to be cared for, you are not doing them a favor by not considering a higher level of care. And that's the bottom line. Anyone else? Serene.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Serene.
I was feeling so bad today. It's our our anniversary.
Oh, oh my.
I didn't go out to visit with Richard, knowing that full well he doesn't remember anyway. So I know my children they text to wish us a happy anniversary, and my sister did the same. My sister, God bless her, she's always been the one that reminded Richard of our anniversary. And so she's babysitting her grandchild today, but she said, you know, it's okay. Don't worry about it. He's in good care. So
I honor your grief, Serene.
yeah, I felt depressed, but I just went and helped my sister do some shopping and, you know, just took my mind off of things today. So
Yes.
thank you for
Yes.
today's Zoom class today. Yeah. It's tough.
I feel and honor your grief, Serene, and it is so much. It's of so much importance that you're with us today, and that you can experience that you're not alone.
Thank you.
Anniversaries, holidays, hardest, and we get it. We get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else? We're going to need to stop in a moment, but if anybody else has a comment or question, certainly welcome that. I'm so glad that all of you were able to join today. I celebrate each and every one of you. I feel so honored to be a portion of your journey. I know you in your courage, and I know you in your triumphs, and I know you in your uncomfortable emotions. And I join you with dignity and honor, and the reminder that this too shall pass, and we will join hands together, and we will get through this, and we will be stronger for the journey.
Yeah.
Karen, how do we get into the recording? If we want to review it with.
Oh, yes. It's on our website. It's on the DayBreak website. I want to just ask you real quickly, Annie, in answer to your question, it will be on our newsletter next week.
Oh, okay.
And if you're not signed up or receiving our newsletter, please let us know. It's a wonderful resource for you to be able to stay in touch with what's happening, what's going to happen. So I encourage you to be a part of that. We are a community, and we are a wonderful community, and I really encourage any which way that we can reach out to one another and touch each other, because we're an incredible community. Okay, I think that is it for now.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining, and keep the faith, okay?
Don't
Thank you,
give
Karen.
up. Don't give in.
Don't give up, don't give in. And honor who you are.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.